Hi everyone, this is Brian Hayes and welcome to episode 19 of the Music Mind podcast. Today my special guest is Louise Anton, a wonderful award-winning composer, singer, piano player, entertainer, television personality and a whole lot more. She also just happens to have one of the finest Australian female vocal voices that we've ever produced. Please enjoy my conversation with the wonderful Louise Anton.
I can walk on water, I can turn the tide, I can alter ego or diminish pride, thinking the same, being different. You can all change with resilience. I can keep this secret, or I can set it free. Got nothing to lose but vanity. Lay on the ground, you never saw life unanswered evermore. Here I am, waiting for the day I could stand, live my own way. Here I am. I got tired of pushing up that hill, try to fake it against my will. Learn to let go. Next you know, you'll be running home. Cause here I am, waiting for the day I could stand, live my own way. Here I am. Each day I feel it closing in. I'm just waiting in the wings of all my yesterdays. This is a new day. Cause here I am, waiting for the day I could stand, live my own way. Here I am, waiting for the day I could stand. Here I am. I can feel it getting closer. I don't care about getting older. All I know now, it is meant to be. Here I am.
Well, hi Louise and welcome to the Music Mind podcast. It's great to have you here today as my special guest for episode 19 in the
Oh,
series.
Brian. Oh, that's so fantastic. Thank you so much for having me.
Our audience have just seen and heard a wonderful performance live at the Basement in Sydney of
Yeah.
an original song, I believe, that you composed called Here I Am. Can you tell us about that song and also your memories of that performance?
Absolutely. I wrote that song probably in about 2008, so a long time ago, and took it to Harry Vander, who I guess you would know from Vander and Young, the famed
Yes.
songwriting producer duo, Friday on My Mind, Easy Beats, Lovers in the Air. So I was working with Harry, he was my producer at that time, and we recorded that song, but it was sort of the second or third version of that song because I actually wrote it and called it I'm Here. And then we ended up changing some of the lyrics, and then I retitled it Here I Am.
Right.
So interestingly, that song won the Stephen Schwartz and University of Tasmania Songwriter Award, the inaugural Stephen Schwartz Award in 2010, actually. But back to that performance at the Basement, that was sort of like a soft release of the album that I'd recorded with Harry Vander producing.
It's beautifully shot and beautifully recorded, like exceptional
Ah,
for a live performance. I noticed you
thank you.
sitting casually at a Steinway grand piano, so it wasn't the
I know.
$200 Casio keyboard.
Yeah, that's a bit hard to take, isn't it? A
That's
Steinway.
right. Just want to talk a bit about that band. Was that a band put together? Was it just a team of session players, or was that your band?
It was pretty much my band, and those guys that were playing, like Adrian Cannon on drums, Emil Nelson on bass, Peter Watson on guitar, they were all on the recordings too, which was really great. Yeah, yeah.
I'm like you, I do a lot of music teaching, but I think that particular Here I Am is a classic example of the importance of space in music. Those musicians gave you all the space in the world.
Yeah.
The guitar players were not just chunking away on the chords, and the drummer, just amazing drummer. I just loved his sense of, where to sit in that.
And he's one of my dear friends, and we've done lots of gigs together, like, over in Singapore, and we put a little band together with Mark Gray. Do you remember Mark Gray on bass? The famed Paul Gray's brother, Mark Gray. And Mark works with Joe Camilleri. I'm getting off track here.
No, that's okay.
But, all these great musicians that I've worked with and been blessed to work with.
Yes.
And a lot of them that and I know we'll probably get there, but a lot of them that you've spoken to on your podcast.
Absolutely. And the podcast is all about the creative life. And a lot of the listeners are, I guess, school-aged and interested in music and sort of wondering what they can do in music. It's changed a lot. But before we get into that, I want to go back to your approach to composing. So it was interesting, you said even the name of that, a bit like Paul McCartney with Yesterday, I think it was Fried Eggs or something when he first started just humming lyrics.
Ham and eggs.
Ham and eggs or something, that's right, and it became Yesterday. What's your general approach to writing a song? What if you have a process, what is it?
Yeah, I feel like it's a very simple process. When I am in that mood to just sort of be sitting at the piano, singing and playing, and back then I was songwriting all the time. I was quite prolific. But of course, when you're doing other things like teaching and gigging, and so sometimes you get a bit off track with this. Well, I do with the songwriting. But when I'm in that mood, honestly, I just sit at the piano and I come up with the words at the same time, the lyrics, the same time as I come up with the music, pretty much. I piece it together as I go. However, having said that, I might then think that that's the best thing that I've ever written, and I shelve it for a little while and I come back to it and I go, oh, that's awful.
Yes.
But there could be something else that naturally comes out of that piece that I've written, but it might actually morph into something else completely.
So, is it a chord sequence first or a melody, or does it almost just happen together?
Yeah, it almost happens together. Interestingly, with you saying like Paul McCartney, ham and eggs.
Yeah.
There can be a big change in lyrics, of course, as well over time. Like you'll tweak the song. I keep going back to it. If it's a really good song, that I think is a good song, and I've got to feel something too, Brian. It can't just be, plodding along. If I'm really feeling something and I get to the end of writing it, it feels like a real, I don't know, a very emotional, spiritual experience, if you like. Yeah. But I do find that there's a lot of change that can happen, especially when you're recording an original song, because then you might need to edit some things. Harry Vander would say to me, "You're waffling, Louise." And I'd go, "Oh, really? Really? But Harry, listen to this bit." And he'd go, "Yes, but you've said that bit. You're waffling now. You don't need to say that again." And there's so much you can learn from masters like that, of course.
Well, isn't that a wonderful insight to the real role of the producer? To sit back there, they're not emotionally attached to the song where you are. It's been a baby of yours for maybe 6 months or however long.
Mm.
I just want to talk to you about, so your beginnings in music, obviously you play the piano and you sing. Has it always
Yeah.
been the piano and the voice, or how did it all start?
It always has been. My mum was a piano player and singer, but she was a very classical singer. She used to sing on ABC radio here in Perth, singing arias. And so piano, she would always play and sing with her sisters. They all sang. My dad was not a musician at all. So
Okay.
he was like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
I've got not a musical bone in my body, but he was a very clever
Yes.
man with, in
Other
another
things.
area with
Yes.
tools and things.
Yes.
But mum made me have piano lessons from 7, and I
Right.
had some lovely teachers. I had a few teachers along the way, but I never really was interested in doing too many exams or doing the scales. Even from the age of 9, I just wanted to play my own songs, but write my own songs. I didn't know
Yes.
what I was writing,
No.
but I'd write these terrible little ditties with terrible rhymes, like,
Yeah.
but as you do, but that's, mum would find, scraps of paper just
Yeah.
left on the piano, and she'd be like, oh, what is that with chords? And so I'm a
Yes.
very chordal kind of player. I
Yes.
can read music, but
Yeah.
when I write, I don't write
Yeah.
dots, like I don't write music that way.
So in summary, you were classically trained on the piano, but it sounds like
Yeah.
you rapidly moved into the piano as being a
Mm.
supportive role for your voice. Did you see it more as
Yeah.
what you wanted to do?
That is so spot on. What an
Yeah.
observation. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I still feel that way today. Like the piano is more of a supportive role. I'm okay at playing solos, but I'm not, a jazz
Mm.
or the kind of player that can really go off on. I'd
Yes.
love to, Brian. Maybe you could teach me how
Well,
to play great
well,
improvising great solos,
Diana Krall, of course, is an
Oh,
amazing piano player and singer.
yes. Incredible.
And I had the chance only very recently here in Brisbane
Yeah.
to go to the Brisbane Jazz Club. It's been there for more than 50 years. It only fits
Yeah.
about 130 people in. And I took a punt on seeing Dami Im. It's
Yes.
one of the most amazing concerts I've ever been to. She
Oh.
just came, she had a lovely 4-piece band, her on piano, and thankfully the Jazz Club has an in-tune Yamaha grand piano, a beautiful piano,
Oh,
kept
gorgeous.
beautifully.
Love
And she had
Yamaha pianos.
a drummer, electric bass player, and electric guitar player.
Yeah.
But the thing that just knocked me is at one stage, the band just left, and she did the most stunning version of Both Sides Now, Joni Mitchell's Both Sides Now,
Oh.
piano and voice. And I was still getting shivers up my spine. It was unbelievable. In the same way as she wasn't showing off on the piano.
Yeah.
She played the perfect role on the piano to an extraordinary voice.
She has an amazing voice. She's so musical.
The audience is going to see and hear you play and sing. And the next track I want to play is where you step away from the piano. Because it's interesting. I remember reading where Elton John and particularly Billy Joel sort of felt as a performer that he was, to some extent, trapped behind the piano, even though he's a wonderful thing. And he actually took up guitar for his little period when he went a bit rock and roll. And I remember seeing, and he would just, for a few songs, just play a few 3-chord songs on the electric guitar so he could get up and walk away. Do you ever feel trapped behind the piano, or is it your best friend there with you all the time?
Do you know, I feel like it's really my best friend, and I feel like we meld really well together. It's a great mix.
Yes.
But there is a however and a but.
Yeah.
I did a show at the end of last year at Mandurah Performing Arts down here, where I live.
Yep.
And it's a beautiful theatre space, actually. It's a great gig. Actually, Marsha Hines is here soon.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Barnes has been here. So it's a great room to play.
Yes.
And I decided to mix it up because I always do that show with piano and vocal, or piano, vocal, and something else.
Yes.
But I decided to do it primarily with a 3-piece trio, piano player, MD, bass and drums.
Yes.
And I stood up front and sang, and I found it really liberating, actually, as a singer, the singer side of me.
Yes.
But there was a part of it I felt a little bit lost, but because I'd set up that gig as me singing in front of the band, I played one solo at the piano, And I felt a little bit out of whack.
Okay.
It was really interesting because I felt like
imposter syndrome.
today.
Yeah, imposter syndrome. What am I doing on the piano?
It's not my role today. Yeah.
This is a wonderful segue into, because the next track I want to play is just a little extract from a song, Loyalty. You were live on national TV. Wonderful guitar player playing acoustic guitar sitting beside you. Do you remember that guitarist's name?
Yes. So that was Peter Watson. Well, it is Peter Watson.
Yes.
And Peter and I were married at the time.
Ah.
So yes, yeah. And we had such a great musical connection.
Oh.
And we wrote that song together, actually.
Oh,
so
well,
yeah.
Let's have a look and a listen at Loyalty live on national TV, and then we'll talk a little bit more about that after we've had a look.
We'll bring it on down to the ground, from the earth to the sea, then to you. You are light in my eyes, in case I never told you. Surprise, surprise. While you're getting gray, but oh, what character we have today. And I know he loves me so much I can barely breathe, and I know he wants me too much for me to conceive, and oh, how he needs me, another man I'll ever need. Now loyalty. Now I believe in loyalty. Oh, I believe in loyalty.
Okay, Louise, so that's a wonderful example of you in the singer's role. No piano in sight, fantastic band, beautiful playing on guitar from Peter, and wonderful chemistry between the two of you. One comment I'd like to mention, I'd just like to get your feedback, is like all the great singers, you seem to know where the camera is. You seem to perform to the camera. Do you feel you're doing that in a case like that where you know it's being filmed on TV?
Do you know, it's funny because one of my very first, not gigs, that was at 16, but then I went in to do some shows on Channel 9 in Perth here.
Yes.
And it was, I was a contestant on this show called Perth's Young Entertainers. Then I went to the big boys, show called The Entertainers once I turned 18.
Right.
And then I actually won the role of a host for Channel 9 called Perth's Young Entertainers, and I was hosting the show and singing on the show. Okay. And the reason I tell you that is because I feel like I always had a bit of a natural affiliation with the TV kind of singing. Yes. For some reason, I felt very comfortable. I could sense where, and sometimes actually, Brian, though, interestingly, back in the day, they don't really do it so much now, but back in the day, the floor manager would point to which camera, so you could sort of see them in your peripheral, and you could sort of, naturally turn to a different camera. But it was something I was always really comfortable with, actually.
Well, a lot of people aren't, and you do it so naturally, and I'm sure the audience will have appreciated that. Thanks. Are you aware that you are performing to an audience behind that lens, or are you just in the moment just
Well, I think that's, I think that's actually how it feels. I feel like I'm performing to people, to somebody out there.
Yes.
That's how it feels to me. Like, I don't feel like but funnily enough, actually, if you put like a stills camera in front of me, I don't know what to do. I feel like a googie egg because, and I look at people, not that I've, had this experience really, but on red carpets, and I think, how do they do that looking so like fabulous, but not looking cheesy? Whereas as soon as like a stills camera is in front, I can't help but go, Oh, it's so embarrassing. Anyway, never mind.
Well, talk about looking and sounding fabulous. I want to move forward. There's two comedians in Australia, John Doyle and Greg Pickhaver, known by, I suppose, the stage name of Roy and HG. Now, I've been a fan of these two boys for so many years, it's ridiculous. And they had a TV show for quite some years, and for legal reasons, we'll call it Club B, because because back in those
Fair
1990s, it was a very different world, if you know what I mean.
Yes, yeah, but absolutely.
But you were part of that band. You and a lovely lady, Danielle Gahar, formed this thing that the boys, Roy and HG, for whatever reason, called you the Niss and Cedrics.
Yes.
Now, I did a bit of research on what a Niss and Cedric is, and it's a pretty bashed up old Japanese car. It's not what you'd call a glamorous.
Can I show you? I show you?
Yes.
All right. Now, this was from a fan of the show. But can you believe this is from another time as well?
Yes.
It's a Niss and Cedric.
Yes.
And when I say it's from another time, it was actually an ashtray.
Okay.
It's still got the remnants of some. But look, I've kept it all these years because somebody sent this in and said, I found a Niss and Cedric.
How those two boys could think two beautiful ladies like you with voices like angels were tagged to be. I think the biggest thing that car ever did was deliver the Olympic flame to the Tokyo Olympics.
Oh, did it?
I've done a bit of background research. That's its biggest moment. That model car brought the Olympic flame.
Why that car? Isn't that funny? Well, apparently Roy and HG were in a meeting before the show, putting together the show.
Yep.
Had we done the pilot? I think we'd already done the first pilot show.
Right.
And I'll tell you something about that in a moment too.
Yep.
But they were then brainstorming for names. We need names for the band.
Yes.
We need names for the girls.
Yes.
And they said, what about what's the biggest lemon of a car you could think of? And that's what they came up.
That's what they came up
do you
with.
remember? Yeah. And I think they bandied around all these different, the Fiat something.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then I think it was HG, Greg Pickhaver, that said, do you remember the Niss and Cedric? And they went, that's it, the Niss and Cedrics. So isn't that so
It's a
bizarre?
wonderful story. And Rex Go, who was a wonderful guest a couple episodes back, was in the band with you, though. How did I think there's a story where you and Danielle never knew each other. You were just how did you two come together? What's the story there?
Well, so that's what I was going to say a little moment ago. Danielle and I had never met. I was aware of Danielle. She was doing great work in London with a recording deal in London.
Yep.
A lot of session work. I was doing a lot of session work in Sydney as well.
Yes.
A lot of gigs, a lot of TV work.
Yep.
And I just got this call one day from Jamie Rigg, the musical director.
Yes.
I hadn't worked with Jamie before either. No. And he said, well, look, we've got this show, this Roy and HG show, Club
and that's right.
Yeah. And we need a singer. Danielle Gahar's going to be doing it.
Yep.
But the wonderful, the beautiful Chrissy Moy, it was actually offered to Chrissy Moy before it was offered to me. Right. Chrissy Moy from the Midday Show, the Moy sisters.
Yes.
They used to sing on the Midday Show. They were the wonderful backing vocalists.
Yes. Yep.
She was offered the gig.
Right.
But couldn't do the pilot show. So I said, well, look, I'll step in, do the pilot show. That would be wonderful. Danielle and I met for the first time. We hit it off. Oh. We just loved each other immediately.
Yes. Yep.
And we couldn't believe how we sang melody together because we thought that was quite amazing to be able to sing. You know, some voices just don't blend that well together, but we've got very different tones. So I think that's why we worked well. And then I feel to this day, we're still lovely friends, Chrissy and I, but Jamie Rigg then rang after the show and said, well, they want to go ahead with the season. The pilot's been accepted. It's going ahead and they want you and Danielle. And I said, it was Chrissy. But he said, but they've seen you and Danielle now, and that's what they want. They haven't seen Chrissy and Danielle. So
that's a wonderful story and a beautiful segue into. I want to play "Say a Little Prayer" because there's a further twist to this which we'll discuss at the end. But everything you just said about two ladies hitting it off, balancing your voices so beautifully and naturally.
Yeah.
And on this clip, there's just the Niss and Cedrics. I shudder when I say that, thinking of that car out front with Jamie Rigg on piano, just piano.
Yes.
And the two female voices. It's exquisite. It's absolutely beautiful. Let's have a look at it now.
The moment I wake up, before I put on my makeup, I say a little prayer for you. At work I take time, and all through my coffee break time, I say a little prayer for you. Forever and ever, you stay in my heart, and I will love you forever and ever. We never will part. Oh, how I love you. Together, together is how it must be to live without you. Could only mean heartbreak for me. I run for the bus, dear. While riding, I think of us, dear. I say a little prayer for you. At work, I just take time, while off of my coffee break time, say a little prayer for you. Forever and ever, you stay in my heart, and I will love you forever and ever. We never will part. Oh, how I love you. Together, together is how it must be to live without you. Could only mean heartbreak for me. Oh, darling, believe me, there ain't no way I could ever live without you. Please love me too. Say I'm in love with you. Answer my prayer. I'll be loving you. Answer my prayer. Forever and ever, you stay in my heart, and I will love you forever and ever. We never will part. Oh, how I love you. Together, together is how it must be to live without you. Could only mean heartbreak for me.
Okay, Louise, how good was that? I also loved at the end of that song, you both turned around and applauded Jamie on piano.
Oh,
And I think
of
that shows
course.
well, you say of course, but how many
Yeah.
times is the diva out the front and doesn't acknowledge that
Mm.
without that support, you'd be
Yeah.
nowhere?
No, absolutely. Though such wonderful musicians, and
Oh,
I was brought up in a time, I guess, where the musician and the band is just as important as the person out the front, because the person out the front can't do it without the band
exactly.
and the wonderful musicians.
And it
So
was
it is a team. It's a real
it's
team.
and it's a
So,
wonderful example, I guess, for anyone who's looking at this. They might run their own band or something.
yeah,
Don't forget how important those people in that support
yeah.
role are. I thought the three of yous played beautifully there. I
Oh,
guess I've got a question. I mean, that arrangement vocally was
mm.
fantastic. How much rehearsal, how much pre-thought goes into that? Or are you girls just literally saying, okay, here we go, let's have a go? How much rehearsal goes into a performance like that?
Yeah, we did rehearse quite a bit, but we would always just naturally fall into the arrangement of the vocals that we would end up with. So it's not like we had to say, well, or we would say actually, well, Danielle, do you want to, yep, I'll do that part and I'll do this part. But I guess by the time we performed that with Jamie on the show,
Yes.
we'd already gone into the studio and recorded that as well. So we
Okay.
were well oiled by that time too,
Yes.
because we'd recorded the vocals, we'd recorded the track, and that was with producer Paul Gray at the helm from
Okay.
Wah-Wah-Nee fame. So I just
Yes.
wanted to mention the
Absolutely.
beautiful
Yeah.
late great Paul Gray.
Yeah.
And yes, so we were well into the vocal arrangements by that stage as well. But it didn't take us much, I have to say, without sounding cocky. I don't mean that.
No.
It
It certainly doesn't sound over-rehearsed. You know, it doesn't sound like, I'll sing an A and you sing an F and, you know, and away we go. It certainly didn't sound like someone's written out an arrangement for you and you've memorized that. It's just fantastic.
And thanks, Brian. And just on that, also we'd had quite a few years by that stage of working live on the Club B show with Roy and HG, lives every Saturday night. We would only get the material on the Friday.
Yes.
We'd both get cassette tapes.
Yes.
And we would, and we'll work out our parts. We'd get together Saturday morning, we'd run it, we'd do camera runs and rehearsals Saturday afternoon. Guests would come in on the show, like, we had amazing guests on that show, but anyway, lots of fantastic singers and actors, and anyway, and then we would perform. So we had to be pretty quick with our parts as well, I guess. And there were some moments where we, didn't really nail it.
Absolutely.
Live TV.
I just want to go back to Say a Little Prayer. Now, one of the most successful songwriters of all time is the late, great Burt Bacharach. And if you think of the songs that Burt wrote, and his lyricist was more often than not Hal David, but Say a Little Prayer is one of those Burt songs. I saw when Burt passed away that he had an estimated estate of about $170 million US from his songwriting.
Wow.
So it's a different era.
It's pretty good.
Pretty good. Not a bad way to make a living, but I guess it was a different era where the songwriter really had a career. And I talked to Peter Northcote about this, and Peter's so positive. He says, look, everything's different, but it isn't that different. So
yes, I agree with that. Yeah.
So everything's different. He said, really isn't. You can still, if you really wanted to be a songwriter, you could do it.
Yes. And if you really want to be a gigging musician or making money from making a living, it sounds terrible saying making money from, I don't mean that, but making a living from music, I think you just have to, if you really want to be a professional musician, then you have to find ways to make that happen. Yes. You do.
But some things did fall in your lap, because can you tell us the story? Can you tell us the story about how you met Burt?
Oh, Burt. And I have a great affection for Burt. He was always lovely with me. But my very first meeting was I was playing a gig in a cocktail lounge at, I think it was called the A&A or the Shangri-La Hotel in the Rocks in Sydney.
Okay.
And I was doing that gig 4 nights a week. I had the residency there. And Burt, I happened to be coming and staying at the hotel with his band. I didn't know when they were coming, but there was rumours that, because you always know when a big artist or act is coming to stay at the hotel. But I just happened to be playing that evening Close to You. I was playing that on piano and singing it and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And then about 5 or 10 minutes later, I'm still playing the gig as you do. And then I looked up. I could see a bit of a commotion happening in the foyer, but I looked up and saw this man walking towards me, and I thought to myself, if I didn't know better, I would think that would be Burt Bacharach. But I thought, what do you know, Louise? Just keep playing.
Yes.
Anyway, he came walking straight up the piano, leant on the piano, and he said, "Hi, I'm Burt." And I went, "Oh." And he said,
"Raindrops keep falling." You suddenly changed the song. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and I said, "Oh, hi, I'm Louise." Like a good musician does. I just kept,
keep playing.
Someone that learns, this is what you need to do. Keep playing.
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, hi, I'm Louise." He said, no word of a lie. He said, "I heard you playing my song," which sounds like a line from a movie.
Yes.
And I had to think, what was? And he said, close to you. I heard you playing. It sounded lovely. And I went, oh, because, you know, when you're playing a gig, you're just sort of rolling along.
Yes.
And I said, oh, thank you. Anyway, we got talking. I got to know Burt because he was staying at the hotel for two or 3 weeks, doing all these gigs at the Sydney Opera House. And he invited me to come and see his gigs. I ended up hanging out with the band. The band would come to the cocktail lounge after the shows, before the shows.
Right.
There was great pressure though, Brian, because I was like, oh no, here they all come. Now I've got to be good, you know?
Yeah.
But out of that, I was offered this best gig of my life. Burt had organised for me to be the opening act for Dionne Warwick, who was coming to play at the Sydney Opera House in the big main concert hall. And Burt said, well, his management had organised for me to do the opening set.
Wow.
And they said, you can do whatever you like. And at that stage, I was with Harry Vander and we were looking to release my album. And Harry Vander was a guest. I remember him, you know, I said, Harry, you've got to come to this gig. Where are you playing, Louise? Sydney Opera House. Okay. So I was allowed to do an hour of just my whole True Believer album, which was the album that I wrote. Apart from, I put one song, and you touched on this earlier, which was written by Burt Bacharach, and the only song that had written the lyrics, he'd written the lyrics with, or Sir Tim Rice wrote the lyrics.
Wow. Okay.
This song called Who'll Speak for Love.
Wow.
Burt wrote the music, Sir Tim Rice wrote the lyrics. I met Sir Tim Rice out of that. It was just an amazing time. It was like, what's happening? And I did this wonderful gig open for Dionne. And again, I was so blessed because the band had all set up, but this big I think it's a 9-foot
Steinway
in the middle of the Opera House. And honestly, I had to walk out on my own with a full audience, full house. And I thought, well, it's now or never, Louise. And unfortunately, I don't have great recordings. There's some scratchy recordings from there, but it was the best gig of my life.
The memories of that. And I guess all I can think of as you were telling that story is, you know, the old saying, when preparation meets opportunity. Like you were ready for that moment. You'd spent your whole life, you know, without you realising it, you'd spent your whole life. Because Burt just wouldn't go up to the average cocktail piano player who happened to play close to you. He must have liked how you were performing.
Oh, wow.
And I think that's a real credit to you. Here in Australia, I think sometimes we can forget about it's okay to celebrate local success. We've got this funny thing about, you know,
we do, don't we?
Yes, if like, we don't get ahead of yourself, you know.
Don't get too big for your boots.
But I do remember you on Club B after I saw you play with Peter Northcote. And I absolutely loved how you and Peter did that Songbird. And I just thought, wow,
thank you.
Know, I've got to invite you on because you've got a wonderful Australian approach, I think, to singing. To me, it doesn't sound like you're trying to be Mariah Carey or trying to be Whitney.
Yes.
You're happy just being Louise, having grown up where you've grown up and played where you've played and with who you've played. I want to take you back now to, unfortunately, we don't have any good vision of you at the Opera House, but we do have you back at the piano, just you and the piano, and I think it's probably in your lounge room with a beautiful song called When the World's Crying.
Oh, wow.
Tell us about this one. Tell us about this.
Well, I wrote this song around the COVID time, you know, like it was an amazing time to be creative because the world just turned upside down, didn't it? And everybody was very, very frightened at that time.
Absolutely.
But it was also, I just felt like when the world's crying, we just need to man up. We just need to come together, really. because I just felt that at that time, and I feel like that way still about the world now. It's very much in
It's still a
turmoil,
bit
isn't it?
uneasy, isn't it?
It is.
It's coming out of it in an uneasy way.
Yeah.
And I think this is a really wonderful example of you and your friend, the piano, working together
Yeah.
as a team. So let's have a
Yes.
look and a listen to you singing and playing a beautiful song, When the World's Crying.
We can blame it all on God. We can stand up to it all. We can turn against our kind, but what would we find? We can try and ignore truth, or fight for rights of all. Let's nurture our youth to not take the fall. But don't you be late, don't you be lazy, don't be afraid when it gets crazy. We don't need your silence when the world's crying. We will learn to live again without looking back behind. Remember our friends, we dare to be kind. But don't you be late, don't you be lazy, don't be afraid when it gets crazy. We don't need your silence when the world's crying. Don't you be late, don't you be lazy, don't be afraid when it gets crazy. We don't need your silence when the world's crying. But don't you be late, don't you be lazy, don't be afraid when it gets crazy. We don't need your silence when the world's crying.
Okay, Louise, so you obviously are based in Perth now, which for our international audience is, I believe, the most isolated capital city in the world.
Yes. Good on me.
Well, I've been to Perth once, and it must have been, I think
Yeah.
it must have been 30 years ago. And my memory of it
Wow.
was, well, it's a little Brisbane, I thought. It felt like a
Oh.
little Brisbane. But
Yeah.
the thing that I most remember was that it was in the days of the newspaper. There's none of this, like on the mobile phone. But
Yeah.
I couldn't believe the West Australian had not a single thing about Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, the east side of Australia.
Oh no. Oh no. It's still a bit like that, I have to
It's a different
say.
world. I thought they could have dropped a nuclear bomb on Sydney. It wouldn't have got a listing.
Yeah,
It's what's happening in West Australia and Perth. And I think that
Right.
when you look back at that,
Mm.
do you think now it was perhaps an advantage for you? As I said, you've got your own style. Do you
Mm.
think that growing up in that somewhat isolated area was an advantage or a disadvantage?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. Perhaps it was an advantage, But I have to say, by the time I was hosting a TV show by 8, I was gigging at 16.
Yes.
I have to tell you this quick little story.
Yeah,
actually.
of course. Yeah.
At 16, I knew I wanted to be a piano player and singer. There was no question. And I said to Dad, can we drive around to restaurants and things? I just want to get a job. So we found out where there were pianos and things.
Yes.
He put together a little homemade PA for me with a microphone.
Yep.
Anyway, we drove around, ended up getting a little job at 16 at this restaurant. And that set me on my path for live gigs. But I think, Brian, by the time I was 18, then I was hosting a TV show, singing on the TV show here. By the time I was 21, and dare I say it, because I love Perth and I live back here and this is where I grew up, but I couldn't wait to get out of Perth. I couldn't wait to get to Sydney.
Yes.
And become the singer that I really wanted to become and really be a musician. I think because I went into television, which I was very comfortable with, I really wanted to find out what it was like just being a fully fledged muso, because I think that's really where my heart had always been, really.
So tell us about that. So you moved to the biggest populated city in Australia.
Yeah.
What did it feel like, a girl from the bush comparatively to Sydney?
Yes.
Tell us a bit about that, because you ended up in some really good high-profile session jobs and national television. How did that, I imagine you turn up with your suitcase and probably nothing much else, or how did you find your way into the Sydney scene?
Well, I guess I found my way in because I was blessed with the TV introductions as well, because then I knew the likes of, Daryl Summers and I know he's Melbourne based, but Ray Martin. So I had that connection with the midday show. So I could not quite comfortably, still scary, move to Sydney, set up a place to live and start with TV shows, and then working with wonderful session singers that were already doing the session thing, like Chrissy Moy from the Moy Sisters, as I said before, because they took me under their wing, and I would do some backing vocals on midday show, but I'd also do my own, like Loyalty, that song that you played earlier. It was amazing, Brian, because they actually let me do, if I wanted to do an original song, they were all up for it, and they wrote the arrangements. They were like, yes, let's do that. Amazing, really. So I guess it was living in Sydney. I think if you're aspiring to work somewhere like Sydney or Melbourne, one of the bigger cities, or even if you wanted to come to Perth, but you need to be entrenched there, don't you? Yes. You can't be sort of saying, well, I want to fly to and from really too much. No. If you want to be a working musician, you kind of really need to be there, especially somewhere like Sydney, I think.
So what I'm picking up there is your TV presence, albeit from Perth, was a foot in the door.
Oh, it really
TV in Sydney.
Absolutely.
Which then opened up, I guess you're playing with the best musicians in town in those bands, and everyone gets to see and hear you.
Do you know, it was a bit of a springboard, I guess, and actually, if you asked Rex Go and Gordon, players like that as well, the whole TV session thing, those kind of players, it kind of melded into the session work. Because I would do loads of session singing for TV, radio. When will I see you again? Those kind of Hungry Jack's ads, or LJ Hooker, you're the best. All those back in the day. But we were very fortunate then, because it was. And I think a bit of that's happening now again with the resurgence of Australian Idol and those kind of shows, with backing vocalists on the shows. So it all kind of feeds in. If you're in that session kind of thing, I think, and really, it's quite a small industry, really. It's a big music industry, but everybody kind of knows everybody.
Knows each other. 99% of the world's musicians will never get behind those studio doors to be paid as a session player.
That's true.
What's it like? How much are you told? Or here's what we want you to sing. Do they leave it to you, or have they got a melody? Have they got a lead line? Or what's it like as a singer?
They give you the lyrics when you get in there. They give you you've got to be fast. You've got to be quick at what you do. And that's why as well, they'll use the same people a lot in the session world because they know they can cut the mustard.
Reliable.
Like Peter Northcote, turning up. They would say, Peter, we want you to do right. Got it. Yeah. And there might be album recordings and things like that too. Yes. But they use the same kind of session musos, and you would see quite often I'd turn up and I'd be like, oh yeah, Gordo's recording the drums, or I wouldn't see Gordon because by the time you get to the singer, and I'll say, oh, Gordy came in, or Rex was here, and so it's the same pool but there's a vast pool, but you've got to be very quick. So to get back to your question, you've got to be fast. I guess sometimes you'll hear of another singer getting a different session. You'll be like, oh, why didn't they ask me to do that? But obviously the producers know and the engineers know. Yes. Oh, Lou would be good for this one, or
absolutely.
Donna Jensen would be great for this one, or Doug Williams would be great for that.
So just again, from a musician's hat, like I imagine if you turn up to a Manhattan's Transfer singing thing where you got the full thing, that a lot of that is, or Singers Unlimited or any of that, a lot of that is dead set vocal money reworked out. Did you have to sight read sing or
sometimes?
Sometimes
you'd get the dots, you'd get the notes.
Yes.
And I'm not a very fast sight reader, even though I can sight read, but I can follow, once you sort of work out your parts and things like that. Some musicians, of course, are just like straight there, aren't they? I bet you're like that.
I read a little bit of an article on the late Kerry Bedell.
Oh my God. I worked with Kerry Bedell in the early days. She taught me a lot. And what a beautiful woman. What an amazing singer.
I got to see her once, and I just thought, oh my God. But the thing I got in the article was this wonderful story where she was offered, and this is going back, decades on decades. She was offered a gig, I think at Caesar's Palace in America, $5,000 US a week. And it was 6 months' work. So she packs her bags and thinks, I've got to have a crack at this.
Yes.
Do you know, after a week, she came back to Sydney and said, nah, what they wanted from me was more than I was prepared to give.
Really?
Because it was something like 3 shows a day, 5 out of 7 days a week. She was just working herself to death. She lasted a week, and she said, I come back and started getting $15 at the jazz club and loving my music.
It's brilliant.
Isn't that a lovely take?
Yeah,
and
that's
she
great.
was such a wonderful musician, as you know. Like I guess
incredible and a beautiful, warm woman with it. Yes.
So I want to take you back now. We've talked about the session thing. I want to play. I'm a huge fan of the Niss and Cedrics. I really
great.
and you guys did this wonderful version. If there ever was I guess a classic rock band as a performing band, Kiss, you got to say, love them or hate them, the boys have been there. They've been there for a very long time. And one of their absolute iconic hit songs was "I Was Made for Loving You."
Yes.
Yous girls and whoever did the arrangement did an amazing take, an alternate take on that classic Kiss song. I want to play it now so people can enjoy this. Then we'll talk about it.
Great.
Tonight give it all to you in the darkness. There's so much I want to do, and tonight I want to lay it at your feet, 'cause boy, I was made for you, and boy, you were made for me.
So, Louise, tell us a little bit about that. What a wonderful arrangement. What do you recall about that performance and coming up with that arrangement?
Well, I'm laughing because, Brian, when we were putting together songs for the Niss and Cedric album, we had one album and it was called Going for a Song. And we had a picture of a Niss and Cedric cake for some reason on the front cover. Anyway, we were sourcing songs, and we really wanted to do, obviously, cover songs. We didn't put any originals on, although we thought we probably should have, really. And we were looking at songs. And look, I don't mean to sound cocky, but I came up with the idea, and I remember presenting it to Danielle and I was going to say Mark Gray, but the wonderful Paul Gray. Jamie Rigg was the music producer on Roy and HG, but he was so busy with all these different projects. Yeah. And also we loved Paul Gray. He was a dear friend. We did lots of sessions with him. Yes. So he was our touring MD.
Yes.
And recording MD. So he was the producer of that album. So I remember coming along and saying, well, look, maybe we could do Kiss, I Was Made for Loving You. And Danielle was like, what? I said, no, but do it in a different way.
Don't need the mask and the makeup. That's right. Yeah.
That's right. Who's going to stick their tongue out the furthest, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And Paul Gray was well on board. And he was like, so Paul Gray wrote that incredible arrangement. We had a hand in, maybe we could do this. We arranged our vocals. The three of us worked really well together on it. And look, I love it too. I just think, I don't know, I just think it's a lovely version. I remember saying to you on the phone well before we recorded this, that I think you've got one of the best ever Australian voices. I love it. And you've got a little bit of that Australian cheekiness in you, because I love at the end of this song, just as the camera's fading out, you decide to do a little courtesy at the end. So in other words, hello, we're on national TV. We've just nailed an amazing version, but you decided almost like you're going to blow bubbles or something in the background at the end. And I love that. I love that little bit of larrikin in what you do, in amongst all the beautiful emotion in your music. You haven't lost. My all-time favourite jazz musician was the late, great Don Burrows. I love him. I grew up. He was my hero. And the Don Burrows Supper Club, remember that?
Oh, the Don Burrows Supper Club. But Don, if you listen to Don when he's improvising, he played like an Australian larrikin. That was his version of jazz. You listen when Don would take a solo, he was not interested in how Jerry Mulligan might have played it, or how Harry James might have played it, or Charlie Parker. He would just go out in his own self-taught Australian way. And I've always, in the same way Tommy Emmanuel plays the guitar.
I agree. How
Tommy's
incredible.
Not copying anyone. And what I hear in your voice and the way you write your songs, you need to take credit, because you're a name that not too many people have heard of. And one of the things I love about this podcast is I don't care if only one person is introduced to my guest and loves it. I'm totally happy with that. If one person meets my guest for the first time and gets something out of it, I am totally over the moon. That's my approach. And I get so many people who just say, wow, I've got a number of people who will just email me, say, where's this person been hiding? And I'm sure it'll happen after your podcast gets out there.
Wow, thanks, Brian. Do you know, I haven't had anybody say that before. And
I mean it.
Do you know, thank you so much. Meaning about recognizing that, I don't mean to sound, but that I have my own style, because that's really lovely. Thank you so much for that.
One of my all-time favourite musicians, not many people know of this guy as a musician here in Australia, but he's still alive. I think he's 96 or 97 now. Doc Severinsen, the famous American trumpet player who led the Tonight Show band, Johnny Carson's Tonight Show band, for 30 years. Now, well before that, Doc played trumpet in public until he was 95.
Wow.
I thought at 95, it's time. I still think Doc, I bet you I can see Doc in his slippers in the lounge room still playing. But
I bet.
I've done enough now. I've done for 95 years. In the 1960s, he was regarded as New York's #1 trumpet player.
Wow.
And he set out to be New York's
Yes.
#1 trumpet player. So they were just inventing stereo recordings and different ways to record. And there was a label called Command Records who were doing really innovative concepts. Hey, stereo recording. We can have
Wow.
left and right. And they were recording on 35mm film tape.
Oh, wow.
They were doing all these amazing things. And
Yeah.
Doc, because of his profile at the time, they released about 6 or 7 albums featuring him with the best players in America, in New York. One of the album's names, the title for one of the albums, really summed up how he played the trumpet. It was called High, Wide and Wonderful.
Oh, wow.
And when I heard
High,
you,
wide, yeah.
High, Wide, and when I heard you singing Here I Am, when you got to the chorus, I'm sitting there in the verses. I love that. That's nice. When you first hit the chorus, high, wide, wonderful.
Really?
If I had to describe your voice, high, wide, and wonderful. If anyone's qualified to teach singing, you are.
Wow.
You are.
That's huge.
You actually have been out there
Mm.
doing it. But
Mm.
for anyone who's doubting what I'm saying, go back and watch that clip of Here I Am. There's some lovely close-ups of your face. And you're just nailing it. There's not a single vein in the neck that, you know, you haven't turned orange and purple and red. You don't look in danger of having a stroke. You are just letting it go. Tell me about it. How did you start this concept of to also be a teacher?
Do you know, it's interesting because years ago in Sydney, I was doing a bit of coaching, a bit of teaching, and it's coaching as well as technique and singing. But I also find that a lot of people that are coming to me now want to know how to get into gigs, how to get started, all of that sort of thing too, which I love. It's great because that's what I really know about as well. But I always knew I wasn't ready in Sydney to go full time into teaching and taking a lot of students. I worked with Australian Idol in 2003 singing backing vocals for, you know, Guy Sebastian and on the show, and everybody else that was on the show for the first 2 seasons, 2003, 2004, which was great. But back in the day, Brian, we also went on tour with the Australian Idols. So back then they would do big concerts in entertainment centres and sell out 10,000 screaming people. So I was actually touring vocal coach on those tours. So I'd try and keep the idols in line, you know, sort of say, well, you know,
don't
get to bed now, like or do this, try this, giving them ways to sort of save their voices because a lot of them didn't really know a lot of technique, but some did naturally, of course. Then cut to COVID. I was still working here, doing a lot of solo gigs in Perth. But to be honest, I was really getting a bit despondent with that because my mum had passed away. She was that's the whole reason really I moved back to Perth, was to look after my mum.
Good on you.
Well, it was time. And in Sydney, I thought, well, I just need to leave Sydney behind. Anyway, looked after my mum, and then eventually mum passed away. I didn't really want to touch on too much musically because it was quite painful for me because we're very connected, emotional with our music.
Yes.
And then COVID hit and I'd stopped doing gigs but was being creative here, like you know, Peter Northcote and doing those kind of things and writing. And then I just really just had this calling to start to get back to teaching, to really start working with people, to have relationships with musicians and singers, to fill my life up again with music. I felt like I was ready after mum had passed.
Yes.
So after that period, I think it was actually 2022, so it took me a little bit of time.
Yes.
And I thought, that's what I'm going to do. But I'm going to set up the singing studio. But I also want to work with singers that love singing. Don't have to be a professional. You could be a beginner. But as long as you come to me and you love it and it's in your core,
Yeah.
Or you could be a professional, but we need to work on your technique.
Yeah.
Or you can come to me. I've got two actually students at the moment that are in the next lot for Australian Idol, but they've still got their, auditions. They've got they're through the first round.
Yes.
But I love working with all sorts of singers that just love to sing. It's interesting, Brian. I'm getting more into the psychology as well with singers. I have a lot of people that come to me that are anxious, full of anxiety, and so they feel like they can't break through that. But I'm teaching them one step in, front of the other, and just to keep, meaning that it's a very emotional thing for them to be singing.
And look, while you're telling this, it's such a wonderful story. I just want to take you back to Doc Severinsen. When he was about 85 years old, still playing professionally and playing, I'm telling you, playing at the really good on the hardest instrument in the world, the trumpet.
Oh, goodness.
He made this comment in an interview, and someone said, why don't you just retire? And he said, one is it's his life, but the comment that it's burned in my brain, and it totally summarizes everything you've just said, is he said, if you get good at something, really good at something, you must pass it on.
I
you
love
must.
That. Working with the students that I've been working, and some come and go, it's very fluid.
Yes.
I've got my regulars, of course.
Yes.
But some I just need to set them on their way, and then
absolutely.
And some are now gigging, which were too scared to gig before, but they've got gigs. It's so wonderful. But also coming out of where I came out of, where I was really brokenhearted. I know when you lose a parent or someone very extremely close to you, but it took me a lot to come out of that period with my mum. Well, honestly, it's filled me.
Yes.
It's filled my cup, working with all these wonderful people that are so passionate about it. And I'm thinking, wow, I've been blessed to be doing this all my life. And a lot of these people aren't working live. Some of them are. Some are going for auditions and getting lead roles in things.
Who cares? Who cares what? As long as you can be part of their dream. And you said something a minute ago, which I think is really important. The sign of a really good teacher is the one who's brave enough to say, mate, I think it's time for you to move on.
Yes. Set them free.
Set them free.
Move on. Yes.
You're a woman who's worked professionally in a tough game, a male dominated game, but somehow or other you seem to have, unless it's an illusion, you've steered yourself through that wonderfully well.
I don't know how. Oh, thank you.
Well, you seem to be, you seem to be not jaded or anything by. Talk a little bit about that, because there'll be a lot of young ladies watching this thinking, geez, Louise seems pretty cool. She doesn't seem to have all the scars that often can be there.
Wow.
Tell us a bit about that.
I have to say there's been some really bumpy times, and I will talk about one of the most challenging times for me was when I did come out of working with Harry Vander. For 6 years we worked together. Wow. And we came out with this album. Most of it I'm really proud of. Some of it I'm like, oh wow, could have done that better, or I could have written that song better, or and that would be a work in progress. But the track that I'm most proud of is True Believer. I mean, Here I Am was on that album. But Harry was incredible to work with. There, quite often when there's a change in admin or team in a recording company, publishing company, that's what happened at Harry's. There was a change. Yeah. Because we were on this path with this company that was steering me in the right direction.
Yes. Yeah.
Taking me on. But as soon as there was a change of guard, it didn't work, because the person that took over didn't believe in me, didn't particularly like me. And that's where I was really despondent after that. It was very disappointing. But that kind of thing's never made me lose my fuel for music.
Your love of music,
and you've just got to keep going, I think, Brian. And I'll just say this. I think I've been fortunate because all those years ago, my mum made me learn the piano, but she said to me, one day you'll thank me. It's been the biggest tool for me to be able to maneuver through my gigging life.
Oh, yes.
Because I think if I'd had to depend on a band all the way through, because, you know, sometimes that's a difficult thing to keep together and financially and all of that, I can always survive playing the piano and singing. So that's been a wonderful thing for me.
Oh, I think I totally agree with you there.
Yeah.
Now, just so we're really clear, your singing studio, the website is, what is the website?
Oh, it's thesingingstudio.com.au.
Okay, and we'll put that on the screen so everyone's got that.
Okay.
And anyone who's interested after seeing and hearing you speak and perform on this thing, I imagine all the contact details are there. And you're happy. You're happy for someone if they're in Germany but they like what you do to reach out to you.
I actually have Zoom clients as well, Zoom singers. I also thought that's a good thing if ever, goodness me, forbid anything, you know, like COVID, but I don't think the whole world will shut down like that again.
No.
But I have a couple of Zoom students and some that are down the south coast in Perth. So if anybody's overseas,
just
we can
reach
certainly
out
look at that.
and make contact.
Absolutely.
Because, I mean, there's a million people who teach music. There's a million people who teach singing. But like I said before, the real deals are rare. And certainly if you had the opportunity to take a lesson from, you know, Marsha Hines or something and you're in singing, well, wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Any projects on the go, you know, have you got anything you'd like to share with the audience? I know we're recording this in July 2024 but for someone who, what have you got on the go you might want to share with the audience?
Well, I'm really excited actually because I do have this project. I was approached. I've done some work with a symphony orchestra here actually called the Hills Symphony Orchestra.
Right.
Now, obviously, you can't travel everywhere with a symphony orchestra because it's about 45 players. They're wonderful. But they've come up with a concept of a smaller ensemble and they're called the Collective or the Community Collective actually.
Okay.
But under the banner that we're working under, they've approached me. We've got a conductor, a maestro, a real live maestro who's written all of our arrangements, the wonderful Sean Fraser.
Great.
He's fantastic. And funnily enough, I knew Sean. I've known Sean for years when I first started out in music in the, you know, late 80s. We sort of met and started working together way back when. But anyway, they've got this, they're called The Collective. We've put together a show called Louise Anton and The Collective, and we've called it True Colours, which is one of my favourite songs of all time.
Yes.
But we've called it that because we were thinking about bringing out the true colours of music in music, and it's restrung with an 8-piece string section and Sean at the helm.
Yes.
I'm playing piano and singing. And
wow.
So we're starting to do some shows. So we've got some shows booked in from September this year.
Locally in West Australia.
Yes, in Western Australia to begin with. And then who knows? We might,
take it
be touring somewhere. But for the moment, that's what we're doing. I'm really excited about it. We're doing all 80s kind of classics like Mad World, do, 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 with strings, Ordinary World, Nothing Compares to You. Man with a Child in his eyes, Kate Bush.
Yes. I can imagine the arrangements. Yeah, it'll just be beautiful.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Just one final question, and we've covered so much, but if you looked back at your career, what would be, I suppose, your best piece of advice to someone, maybe someone just starting out in music? They might still be at school. They love music. They love everything about it, but they're still trying to work out where they might fit in the game and wrestling with the thing of how do I make a living out of this or do I just do it because I love it? What do you think? You think of everything you've been through and all of those amazing, playing at the Opera House on the centre stage.
I know.
You and your Steinway.
I love
it. And Dionne Warwick's audience. Can you get your mind around it? You know, it's just like, wow. But what do you think you might say to someone who's just trying to get their mind around it?
I think I would say, first and foremost, to have, it is absolutely possible, I think, to have a life and a working life as a professional musician and singer. But I think, Brian, to have that, you have to have a really deep love for it and think of nothing else. Meaning that I don't think you can sort of be, I mean, you can be a part-time musician, but if you absolutely, I mean, anyone can be a musician, can't they?
Yes.
But if you really have that really want and longing to be a full-time professional musician, then you've got to really, really want it. Like Peter Northcote, who you've got to be able to reinvent yourself as well.
Yes.
And I think starting out these days, I guess, using the tools. I mean, I'm dreadful with social media. I need to get better because I know that I would have more reach as well. I'm okay at it, but there's something I just don't really like about it. But I think if you can rein in the social media thing, which young people, that's just a natural thing for them, isn't it?
Yeah.
Then start singing do your TikTok clips and start performing. And that's the advice I'm giving some of my singers now. And one that is through with Australian Idol, I've been coaching him through get gigging. It's the only way to find your voice, and try to work with real musicians if you can, if you don't play an instrument yourself. Don't just keep working with backing tracks, because I don't think that helps for you to find your true style. Because if you're working with backing tracks all the time, you've always got this embedded thing, that's how the singer does it. So I've been blessed, Brian, to be a playing musician, because I think that's how I've developed my own style.
For a singer who the voice is their dream, you would recommend that if they're young, take up an instrument rather than just see yourself as Frank Sinatra. You just, hey, I'm Frank. Well, or what's your advice there?
Even if it's as a tool, it might not be, it's not everyone's cup of tea to be a guitarist, player and singer. It's absolutely not. And I understand that. But even if you have a bit of knowledge of music and you can work your way around the keyboard or a guitar, it's such a great skill to have. Have some lessons with somebody, some, if you're, really, because not every, I mean, I had to have lessons in my mum made me again do have some singing lessons at 16, but it was a classical teacher. We weren't the greatest fit. Beautiful singer friend of my mum's, but we weren't the best fit. So by the time I was then in Sydney, I knew that I needed vocal coaching, and because I needed help with what it took to work with a band and sing with a band and not blow my voice out. So there's definite, and sing as much as you can to develop your chops, your gig fitness. And my voice only became more powerful over the years of doing, lots of gigs too.
We're going to finish with a nice song called True Believer.
Oh,
that's what we're going out with. We're back to the basement. With your Steinway Grand, an amazing group of musicians around you. You even bring in the string players live. It's wonderful. And
thank you, Brian.
What an honour it's been to chat with you. I think the words of True Believer are wonderful. And
thank you.
I'm a true believer that you're doing some amazing things with music. And you've done some amazing things, but I just think your best is ahead of you. I really say that.
What a thing to say! Honestly, it made me cry saying that, because I actually feel like that now. That I feel like I've come through and I don't know, dodge certain things or work through certain things.
Thank you for your time, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to thoroughly enjoy meeting you through this podcast.
Thank you so much, Brian, for inviting me on your wonderful show. It's just such an honour to be talking with you, and that's brought me so much joy. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Louise.
stronger. I'm a true believer. All your sacrifice will come back again better. I'm a true believer. If it's you I'm meant to love, we'll be together forever. I'm a true believer. It only takes one episode of insanity to throw you off. I'm a true believer. It's when questions begin, they never stop. I'm a true believer. And if you step outside the box, you don't at birth. Better figure it out, 'cause you don't want your life to slip away. Nothing wrong with changing your mind 7,000 times a day. I'm a true believer. I'm a true believer. The day you sin, it becomes a permanent thing. I'm a true believer. And if you look outside yourself for answers you'll never learn, I'm a true believer. What doesn't kill you will make you stronger. I'm a true believer. And if you look outside yourself for answers, you better figure it out, 'cause you don't want your life to slip away. Nothing wrong with changing your mind several thousand times a day. I'm a true believer.
What an amazing life Louise has led and continues to lead as a successful female artist in the difficult male-dominated music industry. As always, I asked my guest if she would be interested in doing a musical collaboration, a conversation musically between host and guest. Louise said she'd like to do the beautiful Cyndi Lauper song True Colours, one of her all-time favourite songs. Here's our collaboration on True Colours, Louise with that amazing voice and beautiful piano accompaniment, and I joined her on the slide dobro.
You with the sad eyes, don't be discouraged. Oh, I realize it's hard to take courage in a world full of people. You can lose sight of it all, and the darkness inside will make you feel so small. And I see your true colors shining through. I see your true colors. That's why I love you. Don't be afraid to let them show your true colors. True colors are beautiful, like a rainbow. Show me a smile then. Don't be unhappy, can't remember when I last saw you laughing. If this world makes you go crazy and you've taken all you can bear, you can call me up, because you know I'll be there. And I'll see your true colors shining through. I see your true colors, and that's why I love you. So don't be afraid to let them show your true colors. True colors are beautiful, like a rainbow. This world makes you go crazy and you're taking all you can bear, you can call me up, because you know I'll be there. And I'll see your true colors shining through. I'll see your true colors. That's why I love you. Don't be afraid to let them show your true colors. True colors. True colors. They're shining through. Don't be afraid to let them show your true colors. True